Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Happy Webinar Wednesday. This is Michelle Benjamin from AUDIENCEX. Today, we are talking all about CTV, OTT, ATV, WTF. What is the difference between all those acronyms? That is one of the first things we are going to dig into. Before we get into that amazing content, a few housekeeping notes. If you have any questions, feel free to send them over to us via chat or the Q&A. We will get to those at the end if we don't address them throughout. This is being recorded and we'll be sharing the recording with everyone so you can listen to it again at a later date if you're interested. And I think that's pretty much it for housekeeping, pretty standard stuff. Our presenter today is Joe Horine. He leads our strategy team here at AUDIENCEX. He works closely with our advertiser and agency partners to build media plans that help them reach their target audience. And connected TV, OTT is definitely one of those channels that we use. And with that, I will pass it over to Joe to introduce himself again if he would like, or move along. Joe?
Thanks, Michelle. Happy to be here. Love talking about CTV, OTT, ATV, or WTF. Before we get rolling, I did want to start with a quick dad joke, keep things light here in quarantine. I don't know if anyone has already finished watching the Mandalorian series, Baby Yoda, a big hit. Also an excellent digital marketer, but how did Baby Yoda get his first lead? He used the sales force. Come on, we're having fun.
That's tough.
That one's tough. All right, so we're talking one of the most popular channels in terms of digital marketing right now because everyone is quarantined at home. So let's get into it. Obviously, no surprise here. CTV, whatever you want to call it, is everywhere. It's estimated that 59.1% of the US population is being served ads on CTV specifically, and that number is only expected to grow to be higher than 60% by 2023. The chart that you can see on the right here shows how much CTV ad spending we're seeing, 2019, estimated 2020, moving forward to 2023. Compare that to just the total change in ad spend, which is that blue line, and then the red representing how much spending is increasing for CTV specifically. We're estimating that 7% of total digital ad spend and 5% of all ad spend will be CTV in the next couple of years, which is wild. Just a couple things that we picked up in the last couple of days here. People are watching more of really everything. Nielsen reported that we've seen an 85% year-over-year jump for streaming on televisions. Just through the first 3 weeks of March, an estimated 400 billion with a B minutes were spent watching. During just the week of March 16th alone, 156 billion minutes were spent watching streaming content. Platforms like Twitch, which if you don't know what Twitch is, you essentially can log on and watch people play video games or chess. For more traditional marketers, Twitch seems like a hoax or a prank. It is not. It is a great platform. They've actually seen a 31% jump in usage. Just on March 8th alone, one single day, they saw 33 million hours of viewing. By March 22nd, that was up to 43 million hours. Even YouTube has seen an increase. They're up 15% since social distancing started, and they're accounting for roughly 20% of all streaming minutes. Now, most of those numbers are coming from Nielsen, and Nielsen doesn't have access to Disney Plus, but just for your own curiosity's sake, Netflix is still the Tiger King, if you will, of viewing minutes. They're accounting for almost 30%. Hulu is actually only at 10% of the total minutes being streamed currently, and Amazon is right behind them at 9%. So that was a little surprising to me, knowing how much we get questions about Hulu as a premium partner. Granted, they are still a very, very strong player, but not accounting for as much of a share of voice for streaming minutes as I would have anticipated. And then the last little fun fact here before we move on, even traditional television is expected to see a growth in viewership. And that's the first time we're going to see that since 2012. So people are watching more of everything. Obviously, it's a little bit easier to jump into the CTV space, but even traditional television is still seeing some growth. So we just hit on some CTV trends. I want to take a quick step back and level set on some key terms for today, because the biggest thing that we wanted to do with this presentation is just level set how we as AUDIENCEX kind of view a lot of these terms. I'm sure that you're working with folks who are using things like CTV or OTT interchangeably, and really they're not. So we want to kind of level set with just some definitions there. So let's start with advanced TV. Advanced TV is an umbrella term that refers to all the ways you can serve ads to TV viewing audiences, including linear traditional television, CTV, OTT, addressable TV, programmatic TV, all of which are things that I'll get into. Linear TV, everyone should be pretty familiar with. It's the old school way of buying. OTT, which stands for over the top, is a device that connects to the internet to facilitate viewing on a television, desktop, mobile, or tablet device. That's typically done through some type of app or the website. Say you're going to hulu.com, but it's a much wider spectrum than just something that shows up on a connected television. Now, digital TV is a subset of OTT, and connected TV is another subset, which is just things that are shown on a television. So if you're using CTV as your term of choice, you really are only talking about digital video content that's being viewed on a television. And Michelle, I'm seeing it looks like either some chats or some comments. Hopefully there's our questions coming in, or my slides not moving.
Nope, you're good.
Perfect. So here is a quick overview of the TV landscape. I'll give everyone kind of a second just to take a look at all the different buckets, how they interact together. We've got more detailed definitions on the next slide. So just kind of take a quick second to get accustomed to what we're talking about and looking at here. Before I do click to the next slide, there is one breakout that I want to talk about before we switch. And if you're looking on the right side of this slide, under advanced TV, you're going to see a programmatic TV bucket and an addressable TV bucket. Here's another area where a lot of people are using terms interchangeably when they shouldn't. So programmatic is a term that is a really massively used today. And all that it stands for is using technology to buy and sell digital ads. That is still different than real-time bidding, or RTB. RTB and programmatic are almost always used interchangeably, and again, not accurate. RTB is a form of programmatic buying, but you can't say that all programmatic is RTB. Hopefully that makes sense. Programmatic TV at the highest level is buying based on programs. Addressable TV is buying on households. So hopefully that one makes sense. And now let's click over and take a look at some of these more broad definitions. At the very top, ATV I already hit on. It's just an umbrella term. So everything on kind of the red side here that you'll see falls into what we consider advanced TV, or ATV. Starting on the left of that second row there, traditional TV is difficult. It's expensive. There's a long upfront process. There's negotiations. We at AUDIENCEX don't do traditional TV buying because of how complicated it is, but there is still a ton of money being spent there. Programmatic, as I mentioned, is through a set-top box, and is typically going to be based on programming. That addressable TV is still going to be in a real-time format and is typically based more on programming. Now, OTT there, you can see, has the two subsets of connected TV and digital TV, and that is still separate from some linear buys, which are done through set-top boxes, cable, satellite, all of the things that you're using to watch more traditional television. For us at AUDIENCEX, OTT is where we're spending 99% of our time. We do have access to some set-top box buying, but it typically comes with larger commitments. It's a little bit more complicated. Not saying we don't do it very often, but Today, I'm going to spend most of my time talking about kind of over the top. If you were curious, the majority of OTT purchasing is done on the addressable level. So here's a really quick overview of OTT devices. And again, this is just what you're using to kind of serve content on, really, it could be anything. So across the top there, Apple TV, Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Roku, PlayStations, or Xboxes. Even if you don't have a smart TV, let's say you just have a TV with an HDMI plug-in, you can actually get all of the availability of the internet with one of those devices. Now, a tablet and a PC, you're still watching a lot of that content in the same environment, right? You could be watching on a on-demand nature, or you could have something like Sling, which is what I use, which allows you to kind of get a cable type subscription, but you're picking and choosing the channels that you have. So a little bit more control over what you're paying for. One of the biggest breakouts or areas of confusion is when people start talking about inventory versus devices. And for us, it makes a little bit more sense to talk about the devices you want to target as opposed to the inventory. So OTT inventory is all over the place. It could be CTV, it could be tablet PC. So understanding what devices and why you want to target can be super important when you're talking about anything advanced TV based. The bottom half of the chart, which I didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about, is all the different content types. Now, it gets super tricky to talk about the device to content type, which is why we wanted to break these two slides out. But very, very quickly, let's start on the left. If you're used to using an MVPS or multi-channel video programming, you're going to have multiple channels. There's typically a subscription involved. It can be both physical through a set-top box or virtual, like say a Sling subscription or a Hulu subscription. At the very bottom, TV everywhere is something we get asked about a decent bit. This one is tough because it could mean literally 100 different things to 100 different people, but it's really something that can be streamed on any device. It typically requires a login or a subscription, and it absolutely needs access to the internet. On the right side here, we've got more video on demand, and that can break out into kind of the two different types that you see below there. Whether it's a subscription, like something you're getting for Hulu, which can be paid, or Amazon, which, I have Amazon through a Prime membership. They also have some free offerings, but there's almost always going to be some type of fee you're paying for. And then there are ad-supported video on-demand players, YouTube being the biggest player there. YouTube also is offering their subscription service now, but just for the sake of convenience, YouTube's a great example of one that you can watch a ton of free content when you want and what you want to watch, but you're going to have to deal with some kind of ads. One of the biggest questions we get is, okay, where is this inventory coming from? And this slide is meant to depict kind of a waterfall of options that you're going to run across. So there are opportunities at each of these stages represented by kind of those teal boxes to either set up a direct deal with one of these publishers, maybe a PMP, a private marketplace. You can access them through a number of ways. But so let's start at the top left there. Direct supply partners are someone like a Samsung with their smart TVs, or Vizio doing the same thing, or even Crackle, who's owned by Sony. So they're going to have kind of the first dibs on their own inventory. And that's a couple different ways they can do that. If you have a Samsung TV, they actually have a built-in app that can give you a cable-like service for free. And they pay and support that through OTT ads. Obviously, CTV, knowing that you're watching it on a Samsung TV, is the majority of the inventory that you're able to bid on there. Crackle, on the other hand, is a service that is on Sony televisions. You can also get it for your iOS device on your computer. It's got a little bit more of a wide reach in terms of accessibility, but just another example of where Sony then is controlling, okay, how much of the inventory do we want to save for ourselves and sell versus put on some type of marketplace for people to bid on and purchase. From the direct supply partners, the next biggest players are probably going to be those supply partners. SSPs, for those who are more familiar in the programmatic space, SpotX and PubMatic are just two of the ones that kind of stuck out. But obviously, there's two things that I think we might want to think about for working with an SSP. Some holding companies and the players that are spending millions and millions and millions of dollars, we've actually seen a slight push for consolidation across SSPs. Now, that comes with the trade-off of you have a little bit less on the optimization side, and they're almost always going to want to see some level of commitment, but you can drive a little bit better cost benefit. And when you're working directly with these partners, they're going to give you increased transparency in terms of everything from a cost side as well as the performance of your media. So a little bit of a trade-off there for going direct to a supply partner and setting something up. The other side of that coin is just the variety. If you know your audience, if you know where to find them, what programs they're watching, there's a multitude of ways to find them effectively, safely, and confidently, just based on the targeting that you're overlaying to your campaigns. Third in this waterfall is the device manufacturers. So the example here is Amazon's Fire Stick. They still have the ability to set aside inventory that they're putting on either the apps that are integrated within their little stick here, or they can remarket them and put them on a marketplace as well. But Apple TV, Roku's device, Amazon's Fire Stick, they will have exclusive inventory that you're only going to be able to get or access by buying through them, which is an interesting selling point for what they're trying to do. The fourth stage here is going to be those premium properties and apps. So within Apple TV, for instance, you can say download the Food Network's app. There's a ton of examples for this. Discovery Channel, Comedy Central. If you know the channel or the property, they probably have an app and an integration with a lot of the places that you're going to be seeing content. What's interesting about this, if you wind the clock back, say, let's just go 15 years and look at what something like Comedy Central was running, at the 11:30 midnight time slots, we've seen a shift from, pretty, I'll say, disappointing ads, selling things that you're never going to use, the infomercial type ad, replaced with things that are really targeted, really relevant for the folks who are staying up to, say, watch South Park on Comedy Central. If inventory makes it all the way through there, it can hit the open exchange. And the open exchange can be kind of the Wild West of inventory. You're going to see things from premium inventory that has somehow fallen through the cracks. You're going to see a lot of short form clips on free apps. Crackle ends up with a ton of stuff on the open exchange. You're also going to potentially end up on things that are a little bit less ideal, like the Fireplace app. So especially during the holiday season, when everyone's got kind of that Fireplace app running in the background, those do, in some instances, have ad spots that either come in the beginning of an hour or before you start it. So being very careful and specific with your targeting when you're using the open exchange is something you absolutely need to keep an eye out for. The majority of inventory that is being purchased is not on the open exchange with no targeting. I want to say it's 90 plus has some level of demographic, geographic, brand safety, or whitelist that's overlaid. So just really understand what you're getting when you're targeting the open exchange. In terms of targeting options, this is really, really important to know if you're talking about OTT or CTV here. OTT, for the most part, on the digital TV side, operates like video inventory. So you have a little bit more flexibility in what you can target. CTV, true CTV, is what we get asked about the most. So you can do first-party targeting, you can do third-party targeting, you can build lookalike models, but the biggest call out for all of these things is it's going to be partner dependent. So depending on the platform you're using or who you're having, managing these buys for you, the targeting options are really going to vary. There are things like you can do to add, frequency caps, or say that you want to build lookalikes on a household level, or even at the very bottom here, there are platforms that offer CTV retargeting. So, hey, someone saw your ad, as opposed to continuing to try to stay in front of them with, more video inventory, which is a little bit more expensive. You can retarget them with display ads. And there's a couple interesting things you can do there. Let's say you're feeling really dangerous and you've got a minute CTV spot. We can actually set up quartiles and say, hey, we only want to target people who have watched at least through the second quartile of this minute spot. That being said, a minute is a really long CTV ad, not something we'd recommend, but the option is out there and the inventory is out there. So again, the biggest takeaway from this targeting slide, be very, very clear on what you're talking about, whether it is CTV, OTT, just digital TV, etc. But there are a number of options for how you're targeting, both with some of the options you're seeing here and with simple things like, what geo am I hitting? In terms of what do we really like about OTT? Why is this something that we want to spend time talking about? The first piece is that it's a really strong alternative to TV. People who have been spending their large market share of their budget on linear TV, jumping over to OTT, love what they see. The first one that I love hitting on is the difference between the measurement that you're getting. TV is probabilistic. The reporting you get is really going to be based on an estimate of impression delivery by demographic. It's almost always done by Nielsen, and they're the best in the game at it. But you have no ability to understand the impact of those impressions without another type of paid study, analysis, or some types of analytics tool. During my time at Nationwide, the way that we tried to get a little bit better at TV measurement was through marketing mix models. And marketing mix models are great, but even those have their downfall that you can avoid by going with OTT. At CTV level, you can even get household deterministic measurement. Platforms like the Trade Desk with their cross-device graph, they can say, hey, this household was served an ad. We also tracked a purchase for that brand 6 days later that we can attribute back to a CTV or an OTT spot. The second piece is cost efficiencies. The biggest one that you're going to see there is just the ability to pick and choose your spots and priorities. Say you want to go after sports fans, you've got a huge budget. Traditionally, someone would put in an NBA buy or an NFL buy. Now we can go in and be much more hyper targeted with who we're going after, what they're watching, what they look like, which really leads to less waste, increasing your cost efficiency. For anyone who hasn't been involved in the upfront process, it's a nightmare. It's expensive. It's exhausting. It's really time intensive. It's also at least 6 months out from when your ad's actually going to be running. So if the coronavirus has taught us nothing, then besides we don't know what the future holds, the lack of an upfront is a huge positive here for OTT. And then I hit on it with targeting a little bit, but there's just a ton of additional capabilities that you're going to get with OTT. Some of the more interesting things, user suppression or being able to incorporate first-party data like a CRM list. Let's say you absolutely don't want to serve ads to people who've already bought your product for obvious reasons. We can do that with OTT where we can't do that with traditional television. The viewing experience is also a big plus here. Obviously, in yield times, you're watching a television show, commercial break kicks in, people are getting up to refill their drink or hit the restroom. That's just not the case with OTT and CTV, usually because they're watching it in a much more engaged environment. Short commercial breaks, even if you're watching it on your phone, say while riding the bus, you've got nothing else to do. Your screen's being taken up by the ad, which leads into the final point here. In terms of in-view ads or high video complete rates, OTT and especially CTV absolutely dominate the space. This is a quick slide. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Just the ability to reach consumers where they're already spending time is incredibly impactful. So if you can see along the bottom, this is a slide from 2016, just showing you that consumers are spending 10 to 30 hours already engaged with Netflix, YouTube, and Amazon. As especially during quarantine, more people are increasing that penetration. Reaching consumers where they already are is a fantastic benefit. Last slide I've got, and then we can jump to questions. I did want to quickly touch on fraud. Fraud is very similar to targeting capabilities. It's going to be on a partner by partner basis. Some platforms have integrations with specific partners who focus exclusively on this level of fraud. White Ops is one that I highly recommend looking up. One of the best players in the space. They're doing things like they screen every impression regardless of device type, looking for reverse malware engineering, device impersonation, ad spoofing, hidden ads, incentivized ads, all of the stuff that you're looking to avoid. They're scanning every single video impression to make sure that none of that's popping up. White Ops specifically sees 110 billion CTV requests in a single month. They've also got specific products that are looking to prevent, bot activity, Media Guard being one of the more popular ones. You can also add things like pre and post bid through a partner like Double Verify to help decrease that amount of fraud. There's also some certifications. The IAB has one for TAG, which is a Trustworthy Accountability Group. Essentially, that's a stamp saying like, look, these guys have done their due diligence. The ads that you're going to get are going to be great with no issues. There's a couple other things you can be looking for. PMPs is one way, knowing that you're setting up a direct deal with a partner. They want to make sure that that inventory is of the highest quality, so you're getting the most bang for your buck. There's also, there's a ton of stuff. I could spend a half hour alone talking about how to avoid fraud. The general note of this, when does OTT make sense? Some of the questions that I always ask our clients: what are you trying to accomplish? How much is price a deal breaker for you? And where's the right balance between, say, hey, I only want to run on Hulu, versus I want to reach as many people as possible. And then the last question, who is your target consumer and what do we know about them? If you've got a great picture of who your consumer is, we can be much more targeted for the types of programming when they're watching, call to action, all of the things that make for an effective ad. If anyone on the call does have questions on, hey, I'm not sure if this is the right move for me, anyone at AUDIENCEX would be happy to hop on the phone, kind of talk you through some things to be considering. So we've only got 3 minutes. Michelle, I'd love to open up to any questions we may have. We'll see how many we can get knocked out.
All right. Thank you, Joe. If anybody has questions, send them over. We've got a couple here. So going back to addressable versus programmatic, you had mentioned the difference between is that there's less commitment. And so this person's asking for a little clarification. Are you referencing budget spend? Can you give us some ranges between the two related to spend commitment for addressable and programmatic?
Yeah, so addressable is going to give you a little bit more flexibility only because you're buying at a household level as opposed to a program level. So if you say, hey, I want to go in and buy, let's say live sports, which is one of the more popular and one of the more specific, programmatic TV, they've got just more ability to hold you to a minimum spend level, maybe give you a little bit less of a chance to opt out. You're going to have less variety when it comes to optimizations. So your hands are just a little bit more tied when you're targeting at the program level as opposed to addressable TV that's at kind of a little bit more broad, the household level. The household level also gives us more opportunity to find some combination of OTT and CTV, digital TV and CTV. And in my opinion, that variety and that ability to optimize more effectively is always what we're looking for.
All right. Thank you for the clarification there. Next question, how important is retargeting when you're doing OTT programmatic advertising?
Yeah, that really comes down to what you're trying to accomplish with the buy. Obviously, everyone would love to drive, launch a new product with no brand awareness and jump immediately to conversions. That's really, really tough to do. So while, most video inventory is upper funnel based, being able to incorporate retargeting can help move consumers from pure awareness upper funnel through the mid down to the lower and hopefully, drive a conversion. Again, it's just giving us, more cards to play with. I love retargeting, even if it is just to further stay in front of consumers who maybe over-index or seem more relevant to whatever you're trying to market, sell, or promote.
Cool, got it. Those are the only questions that I see. If anybody else has any, feel free to send them over. Joe has added his email address here. Oh, one more just popped up. Excuse us, since we have 1 more minute. How critical is purchasing something like White Ops? Is using it specific to OTT?
So White Ops is an integration in some platforms already. So the Trade Desk, I want to say, is one that I'm fairly confident White Ops is already integrated into every piece of inventory that they're already buying. If you're working with a partner who doesn't have a White Ops integration, I'm fairly confident they've got something similar. White Ops is just one that I've heard the most about in the last 3 weeks.
Cool. What metric do you use to measure a CTV campaign?
So the simple answer to that is video complete rate. is the easiest or lowest hanging fruit. There's additional options that are out there. Some campaigns say we want to see, we're promoting an app, we want to see how many downloads there are. It is possible to track CTV and digital TV from impression to app download, app install. So there is more functionality than people think. Just one of the reasons that it's still far superior to linear television, where you have no shot of doing that. But depending on what you're trying to accomplish, what your consumer's funnel or journey looks like, we can figure out a KPI that's going to see, hey, this really worked. Here's how we can quantify it.
All right. What about ad skipping? What is the percentage we see of consumers who opt out of ads?
By opt out, I'm going to assume they mean where it's like, a 6 second of a 30 and they skip it. That is going to vary dramatically by platform. YouTube is the biggest one who offers kind of the, hey, here's a 30-second spot. After 6 seconds, you can skip it. Say compared to the free version of Hulu, where you've got no choice. You're watching the full ad. So a general percentage is going to be tough. If you have a specific platform or, let's say inventory provider that you would be curious about, happy to dig into that, but that's going to be probably a follow-up.
All right. I think we've got a couple more that might require a separate conversation, but I will read them aloud and see if you can give a general answer.
Sure.
I have a lot of traditional TV clients. I'm starting to shift them into a strategic mix of television tactics that include OTT and CTV. The challenge is balancing that mix, how much to appropriate to each tactical line item. So if the goal is broad awareness, what is your suggestion for a best practice in terms of that planning, splitting traditional versus these other channels?
Yeah, so broad awareness can mean a lot of things. I'll use my experience at Nationwide. Our brand awareness was the metric that we really focused on for a while in terms of, hey, how much is, our TV ads say impacting how people are remembering us or connecting the ad they saw with Nationwide as a brand. We then did an analysis and said, hey, how valuable is one extra point in brand health to sales? And ultimately, we couldn't find a direct correlation. So in terms of finding a balance, it's really going to come down to how your clients are viewing the value of upper funnel broad awareness. If you can get them to say, hey, we actually think it's, website visits or people who, land on a learn more about us page or download, a white paper or even sign up for a newsletter that we have. If you can convince clients like, hey, this is a better metric for understanding how, consumers, if we're in their consideration set or not, then the sell for OTT is easy because linear TV can do none of that by about a mile. But obviously that's a tough spot to be in because a lot of traditional marketers really are holding on to TV because that's what they know. That's a great example of one that we would absolutely want to sit down and talk about. Hey, what other things can we be talking about with these clients to really show the value of what we can do with OTT that you just can't match in any form with traditional linear TV?
Yep. Another question, kind of the other end of that spectrum. Have you had success in helping direct response clients? Well, have you had success with direct response in programmatic as well? So can you take it to the other end?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a little bit trickier to find the right mix of, what channels and tactics are we using? Mostly because something like display retargeting is probably going to be more effective at driving that true lower funnel conversion. But a CTV video ad is just flashier. It gets people's attention. You might see better click-through rates. But even comparing that, say, to a high impact unit that we could run that's got functionality and you can engage with the ad, it's going to really run a gambit of, okay, this was effective for this client, this mix was effective for this other client. The way that we'll get to that is using kind of any historical data that you have to give you a real estimate. So the things that we're going to be looking at is, how much organic website traffic are you seeing on a given month? Or we'll walk through like, okay, how are you defining each stage of your consumer journey or consumer funnel? And let's say that you're trying to drive lead form completes, but you're only seeing about 10 of those a month. It's in terms of what we're able to optimize against programmatically. that's just not giving the AI or the machine learning any meat to sink its teeth into. So typically, at least our best practice is we want to see about 100 quote unquote conversions a week before we're confident that we'll be able to optimize towards that. And keep in mind, a conversion can be something like, clicks a specific page, or even, starts an application. And then as we see kind of the numbers build for start applications, hopefully we're seeing an increase in how many people are completing them, with the hope of eventually transitioning to, okay, now we're ready, we can switch over confidently to application completes. So I think that's a little bit of a roundabout way to answer that question, but ultimately it depends.
Yeah, it's a little tricky, but those are all the questions we have. Thank you, everyone. Actually, there's one more question we've been getting quite a bit, which is how can we get access to this recording and this presentation? We will be sending a follow-up email either later this afternoon or tomorrow with the recording. If you would like to see the slides specifically, just reply back to that email or send me a note and I can share them with you. And if you have any other questions, Joe's email is here, and then you can also just reach out to anyone at AUDIENCEX. We're happy to set up a call or answer via email, whatever works for you. And before I say goodbye, a shout out to our next webinar, which is on paid search. So that's coming up on May 13th. It's specifically related to paid search in this unique pandemic moment that we're in, and how you can actions you can take to improve results for your search campaigns if you have them. We'll be sending the registration link out for that also. And I believe that's all. Joe, thank you again for so much insight. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, have a great one. Talk to you later.